What if I told you that the most painful lessons of your life could end up being the greatest gift you'll ever give your children? Sounds strange, doesn't it? But it's true. And nobody proves that better than Johnny Depp. You see, Johnny's story isn't just about Hollywood. It's not about fame, fortune, or red carpets. His story, at its heart, is about one man's promise to himself. A promise that no matter how broken he felt as a boy, he would never let his own children feel that way. A promise that pain would stop with him. That he would break the cycle. And maybe, that's something you've promised yourself too. Maybe you grew up in a house where love felt more like fear. Maybe you heard more shouting than laughter. Maybe you learned early that silence was safer than speaking up. If that's you, if you've ever thought, I'll never make my kids feel like I did, then you're not alone. You and Johnny have more in common than you might think. Let me take you back. Long before the movies. Before the fame. Before the world knew his name. Johnny Depp was just a little boy growing up in Owensboro, Kentucky. And at first glance, his life probably looked ordinary. But behind closed doors, it was anything but. His home was a battlefield. His mother, Betty Sue, was complicated. To put it kindly. Johnny doesn't sugarcoat it when he talks about her now. He calls her cruel. Angry. Even abusive. He remembers how her temper could explode at the smallest thing. How her words could cut just as deep as her hands. And her hands, they hurt. She beat me with a stick, he once said. And not just a stick, anything she could grab in the heat of the moment. A belt. A shoe. Whatever was nearby. Now, just imagine that. Imagine being 6, 7 years old. A kid with messy hair and wide eyes, standing there while the person who's supposed to protect you, becomes the person you fear the most. Johnny remembers flinching when she walked into the room. He remembers holding his breath, just hoping to get through another day without making her mad. And yet, somehow, even as a boy, he made himself a quiet promise. He decided that one day, when he had kids of his own, he would be different. He would never raise his hand to them. Never make them afraid to look him in the eye. Never make them wonder if they were loved. That promise became his North Star. Years later, when he became a father, he kept that promise. Every single day. Even when life was hard, even when his career was chaotic, even when his marriage fell apart, his kids came first. Always. He didn't just avoid the bad. He filled their lives with good. He showered them with affection. Encouragement. Trust. He made sure they knew they could come to him with anything, without fear. And here's the part of his story that really gets me. When his mother passed away, you'd expect him to feel only anger. Or bitterness. Or even relief. And yes. He probably felt all of those things, at least a little. But he also thanked her. He actually thanked her. Why? Because, as he put it, she showed him what not to do. She taught him, through her mistakes, how to be a better parent. She was his example of what happens when anger rules a home. And he decided to do the opposite. That takes strength. That takes grace. And that takes forgiveness. Now, if you're a parent, or if you're just thinking about the kind of parent you'll be someday, there's so much you can learn from Johnny's story. Because here's the thing, it's not enough to say, I'll never be like them. That's a start. But it's not enough. You have to decide what kind of parent you will be. Will you be patient, even when your kids push your buttons? Will you listen, really listen, when they're trying to tell you something? Will you stay calm, even on the days when it feels like nothing's going right? Those are choices you have to make. On purpose. Every single day. And it's not easy. Nobody said it would be. But here's what helps. Don't just avoid the bad. Fill your home with the good. Because kids remember the little things. They remember the hug you gave them when they were scared. They remember the kind word you said when they failed. They remember the smile you gave them when they least expected it. Those moments. They stick. And maybe the most important lesson of all, is forgiveness. Forgive your parents for what they couldn't give you. Forgive yourself for the mistakes you'll inevitably make. Holding on to anger only hurts you. Letting go frees you. Johnny chose to forgive his mother. Not because what she did was okay, far from it. The things she said to him, the way she treated him, the pain she caused, none of that was justified. None of that could ever truly be erased. He carried those memories with him for years, as a boy, as a young man, even as he became a father himself. Every time he raised his voice in frustration, every time he caught himself losing patience, a little voice would whisper in the back of his mind, "Don't be like her." And yet, those scars don't just vanish. They sit quietly inside you, sometimes for decades, waiting for a moment to resurface. But at some point, Johnny realized something powerful. Holding on to that hatred, that bitterness, was hurting him more than it was hurting her memory. It was eating at him from the inside. Every time he thought about her, he felt the anger bubble up again. And that anger, he knew, could easily spill over into the way he treated his own kids. He didn't want that. He couldn't let that happen. You see, that's the tricky thing about pain. When you don't let it go, it starts to change you. You might think you're strong because you're holding on to it, because you're never letting yourself forget. But really, it's like carrying around a poison. And little by little, it seeps into everything else. Johnny could see how easily he could become like her if he wasn't careful. If he let that bitterness guide him, he might say something cruel in a moment of anger. He might let frustration overtake kindness. He might raise his voice instead of lowering it. And the idea of his own kids flinching the way he once did. That broke his heart. So he made the hardest choice of all, he decided to forgive her. Not because she deserved it. Not because he wanted to forget what she'd done. But because he didn't want her shadow following him for the rest of his life. He didn't want his kids to feel that shadow. He didn't want them to grow up in a home where love and anger were tangled up together. Forgiving her wasn't about excusing her. It was about freeing himself. That's something a lot of people misunderstand about forgiveness. People think it means saying, "It's okay." But it's not. Forgiveness doesn't mean what happened was right. It doesn't mean you have to forget. It doesn't even mean you have to tell the person. What it really means is this: you stop letting them control your heart. You stop letting what they did define you. You take your power back. For Johnny, forgiveness was like finally putting down a heavy weight he'd been carrying since childhood. That weight had shaped him, yes, it had taught him how not to treat his kids. But he didn't need to carry it forever. He didn't need to drag it into every room he walked into every conversation he had with his children. He wanted his kids to see a father who was calm. Who was loving. Who was steady. He wanted them to feel safe. He wanted them to know they'd never have to wonder where they stood with him. And so, forgiving his mother became an act of love, not for her, but for his children. He knew that if he let himself stay angry, if he let himself stay bitter, it would poison that love. Maybe not right away. Maybe not in big, obvious ways. But slowly. Quietly. In little moments. An impatient word, a slammed door, a cold silence. Those things add up. So he made a choice. He chose his children. He chose to forgive her so he could be the father they deserved. And you know what? That choice takes more strength than holding on to anger ever could. Because anger is easy. Bitterness is easy. You don't have to work at it. It feeds itself. But forgiveness takes courage. It takes humility. It takes a willingness to say, "I won't let this define me anymore." And that's exactly what Johnny did. When he talks about his mother now, you can still hear the sadness in his voice. You can still hear how deeply it hurt him. But there's also something else in his tone, a kind of peace. A quiet acceptance. Because even though she hurt him, she also gave him something he treasures more than anything else, the determination to do better. That's what breaking the cycle really means. It doesn't mean you pretend the past didn't happen. It means you decide, here and now, that the pain stops with you. That your children will never feel what you felt. And every day, in every hug, in every kind word, in every moment of patience, Johnny proves that choice over and over again. He forgave his mother. Not for her. Not because she deserved it. But because he wanted his love for his kids to be pure. He wanted it to be free of anger, free of bitterness, free of shadows. He wanted his home to be filled with the kind of love he always wished he'd had. And in doing so, he became the kind of father he always needed. That's the real power of forgiveness. That's what makes it so beautiful. It doesn't change the past. But it changes the future. And sometimes, that's all that matters. And you can do the same. Maybe you've already broken the cycle. Maybe you're still trying. Or maybe you're just starting to believe that it's even possible. Wherever you are in your journey, know this, you're not alone. Millions of people, just like you, just like Johnny, are out there, every day, choosing to be better. Choosing to be kind. Choosing to build something beautiful out of something broken. And that's worth everything. So now let me ask you something. What's the one lesson from your childhood that shaped you the most? Maybe it was something someone said. Or something someone did. Maybe it was something you wish you'd never gone through, but now you realize it made you stronger. Take a second. Think about it. And then, if you're willing, share it in the comments below. Your story might just inspire someone else who's struggling today. And if Johnny's story touched you, if it made you see your own life a little differently, then you'll want to stick around for our next video. We're sharing even more stories of people who overcame the toughest childhoods, and turned their pain into love. People who became the parents, the mentors, the role models they always wished they'd had. So don't go anywhere. And hey, if you enjoyed this story, go ahead and tap that like button. Hit subscribe. Turn on notifications, too, that way, you'll never miss another story that matters. Because at the end of the day, we're all just figuring it out as we go. We're all just trying to be a little better than the day before. And every step forward you take, every cycle you break, makes the world just a little brighter for the next generation. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to care enough to try. So thank you, for being here. For listening. For trying. And I can't wait to see you, in the next one.